Hello and welcome back to English Everyday Podcast. I'm Sam. I was just sitting here with my coffee this morning, scrolling through some messages from listeners, and I noticed something interesting. A lot of you are asking the same question. Sam, I've been learning English for a while now, but I still struggle when people talk to me. Why is that? And honestly, I totally get it. It's like you know the grammar, you know the words, but when someone actually speaks to you in English, your mind just goes blank. I got this email last week from a listener named Paulo. He said he's been studying English for 3 years. He can read BBC News articles, he watches English YouTube videos with subtitles, he even passed an English exam. But when his company hired a new manager from the UK, and this manager started talking to him in a meeting, Paulo told me he understood maybe half of what was said. And when he tried to respond, the words just wouldn't come out right. So today, we're going to talk about something really practical. How to actually improve your listening and speaking skills at the intermediate level. Not theory, not grammar rules, just real practical stuff that actually works. All right, before we dive in, you know the method. You see the captions on your screen and you speak with me at the same time, like you're my echo. Don't wait for pauses, just follow along and mimic my voice in real time. I know, it might feel awkward at first, especially if someone else is in the room with you. But trust me, in 6 months, this is going to feel completely natural. You'll understand real conversations without even thinking about it. Your speaking will flow more smoothly because you've trained your mouth to make these sounds, to follow these rhythms. And hey, if you need me to slow down or speed up, just leave a comment below. I read all of them and I'll adjust for future episodes, okay? Some people tell me I speak too fast, others say I could go faster. Everyone's at a different level, and that's completely fine. All right, let's get into it. So, why is listening so hard? I mean, you've studied English, right? You can read articles, you can write emails, you might even be pretty good at grammar tests. But then you watch a movie or talk to a native speaker, and it's like they're speaking a completely different language. I have this friend, Maria, and she was learning Spanish. She could read Spanish novels, like actual novels written for Spanish speakers, not learner books. She knew all the grammar rules, she had a vocabulary of thousands of words, but when she tried to watch Spanish TV shows, she understood maybe 30% of what was said. And she was so frustrated. She kept saying, I know these words. I recognize them when I see them written down. Why can't I understand them when people speak? Here's the thing. There's a huge gap between textbook English and real English. In textbooks, every word is clear and separate. The audio in language learning apps is usually recorded by voice actors who speak very clearly, very slowly. But in real life, we don't talk like that. We use something called connected speech. Connected speech is when words blend together in natural conversation. So instead of saying, do you want to go, we say, do you want to go? See the difference? The words connect, they flow together. Some sounds even disappear completely. And if you've only practiced reading English, your ear isn't used to hearing this. Your brain is looking for clear, separate words, but that's not what it's getting. We also use reductions. Reductions are shortened forms of words, like gonna instead of going to, or wanna instead of want to. So when I say, I'm going to call him later, it actually sounds like, I'm gonna call him later. And if you're not used to these reductions, if you've only seen the full forms in textbooks, Your brain has to work extra hard to understand what people are saying. It's like solving a puzzle in real time while someone is still talking to you. That's why listening feels so difficult. You're not bad at English, you just haven't trained your ear to hear real natural speech yet. And that's exactly what we're doing right now, by the way. You're listening to me speak naturally with all my reductions and connected speech, and you're speaking along with me. Your brain is getting used to the rhythm, the reductions, the connected speech. This is training. All right, now let's talk about speaking, because that's the other big struggle, right? I remember when I was learning French, I knew so many words. I knew the grammar. I could conjugate verbs in like 6 different tenses. But when someone asked me a simple question in French, like, "What did you do this weekend?" I just froze. My brain was doing this. Okay, they asked me a question in French. Let me translate it to English in my head. Now let me think of my answer in English. Okay, I went to the park and saw a movie. Now let me translate that back to French. Wait, what's the past tense of to see in French? And by the time I did all of that, the conversation had already moved on. The person was talking about something else, or they were just looking at me awkwardly waiting. It was exhausting. And this is what happens to a lot of intermediate learners. You hit what we call a plateau. A plateau is when you stop improving, when you feel stuck at the same level. You know enough to understand some things and say some things, but you're not fluent yet. Fluent means speaking smoothly without stopping to think about every word. And the reason you're stuck is because you're still translating in your head. You're not thinking in English yet. And let me tell you, thinking in English is the biggest game changer for speaking. So, how do you get past this plateau? How do you stop translating and start thinking in English? Well, here's the truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. You can't speak what you haven't heard. Think about it. When you were a baby learning your first language, you didn't start by speaking, right? You listened for months, maybe even a year or more, before you said your first word. You were absorbing the sounds, the rhythm, the patterns. Your brain was building a database of how your language works. And then, when you finally spoke, you were just copying what you'd heard thousands of times. That's what we need to do with English too. We need to mimic. Mimic means to copy how someone speaks, their tone, their rhythm, their pronunciation. Kids are amazing at this. Have you ever noticed how kids pick up accents super fast? Like, if a family moves to a new country, the kids will start speaking with the local accent within months. The parents? They might keep their original accent forever. Why? Because kids are natural mimics. They're not afraid to copy sounds exactly as they hear them. Adults tend to be more self-conscious. We're worried about sounding silly or making mistakes. And that's where input comes in. Input is what you listen to and read, all the English that goes into your brain. The more natural English input you get, the more your brain starts to think in English patterns. You stop translating because the English patterns are already there in your head, ready to use. It's like they become automatic. And right now, you're getting input. You're listening to me speak naturally, and you're speaking with me, copying my rhythm and intonation. This is exactly the kind of practice that moves you from translating to thinking in English. I know some of you might feel a bit silly sitting there talking to your screen or your phone. Maybe your family members are giving you weird looks. But honestly, this is how language learning works. We all sound a bit funny when we're practicing. That's totally normal. I sounded ridiculous when I was learning French. I still remember practicing in my bathroom with the door closed because I was too embarrassed for anyone to hear me. And don't worry if you can't keep up with every single word. Just do your best. The important thing is that you're trying, you're actively participating, you're engaging with the language. Even if you only catch 70% of what I'm saying and only manage to repeat 50%, that's still practice. That's still progress. Okay, so let's talk about some practical things you can do to improve your listening and speaking. These are things that have worked for me and for a lot of listeners who've written to me over the months. First, watch shows or movies in English, but here's the key. Watch with English subtitles first. Not subtitles in your language, English subtitles. This way, you're training your ear to match the sounds with the words. You're seeing going to on the screen while hearing gonna. Your brain starts to make those connections. I recommend starting with shows you've already seen in your own language. Like if you loved a particular series, watch it again in English. You already know the story, so you can focus on the language instead of trying to follow the plot. Then, after you've watched something with subtitles, try watching it again without subtitles, or watch the next episode without them. You'll be surprised how much more you understand the second time. Your brain has already learned some of the phrases and expressions from the first viewing. Second thing, and this is huge, talk to yourself in English. I'm serious. When you're alone, narrate what you're doing in English. Okay, I'm making coffee now. I need to heat the water. Where's my favorite mug? Here it is. Now I'll add the coffee grounds. I know it sounds weird and you might feel a bit crazy doing it, but this helps you stop translating. In your head, you're forcing your brain to think in English for everyday things. And everyday things are actually the hardest to talk about because they're so automatic in your own language. You can also describe what you see. Like if you're on a bus, describe the people around you in your head. In English, of course, there's a woman with a red jacket. She's reading a book. The person next to her is looking at their phone. Simple stuff, but it's practice. Third, record yourself speaking. Just use your phone. Talk about your day. Describe something you saw. Tell a story. Give your opinion about something. Then, listen to it. This is uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie. Most people hate listening to their own voice, but you'll notice things. Maybe you're speaking too fast and making mistakes. Maybe you're pausing too much or in weird places. Maybe your pronunciation of certain sounds needs work. You can't improve what you don't notice. And here's something important. Don't aim for perfect. Aim for comfortable. Comfortable means feeling relaxed and natural, not stressed about every word. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. We say and We hesitate. Hesitate means to pause because you're unsure. We sometimes use the wrong word and then correct ourselves. We start sentences and then restart them because we changed our mind about what we wanted to say. That's real communication. It's not about being perfect. It's about expressing your ideas and being understood. As long as people understand what you mean, you're communicating successfully. And again, if my speaking speed is too fast or too slow for you right now, let me know in the comments. I want this to be useful for you, so your feedback really helps me. I've actually slowed down my speaking a bit compared to my first episodes because a lot of people ask me to. All right, so let's talk about some practical phrases. These are phrases you'll actually hear in real conversations, and phrases you can use yourself. So speak these with me as we go through them. First, when you don't understand something, you can say, "Could you repeat that?" simple, polite, and totally normal to ask someone to repeat themselves. Even native speakers do this all the time. Or you can say, "I didn't quite catch that." This is a really natural way to say you didn't hear or understand something. Catch, in this context, means to hear or understand. You could also say, "Sorry, what was that?" Super casual, very common. If someone uses a word or phrase you don't know, you can ask, "What do you mean by that?" Or, "Can you explain that differently?" Or even, "Sorry, I'm not familiar with that word." Most people are happy to explain. In fact, they usually appreciate that you're making an effort to understand rather than just nodding and pretending you got it. Now, here's a useful phrase when you need time to think. You can say, "Let me think about that for a second." This buys you time. You're not just standing there in silence, you're letting the other person know you're thinking about what they said. Or you can say, "That's a good point." This gives you a moment while you're also showing you're listening and engaged in the conversation. Another good one, that's an interesting question. Again, buying yourself thinking time. When you understand what someone is saying, you can respond with, "I see what you're saying," or "That makes sense," or "Yeah, I get that." These are good for showing you're following the conversation. If you want to share your honest opinion, you can start with, "To be honest," or "Actually, I was thinking," or "In my opinion." These phrases are great because they sound natural and confident, and they give you a way to introduce your own thoughts. If something someone says reminds you of something, you can say, "That reminds me of," and then share your thought or story. This is a great way to contribute to a conversation and keep it flowing. If you're confused, it's totally okay to say, "I'm not sure I understand," or "I'm a bit confused." Don't pretend to understand when you don't. That just makes things more confusing later, and you might miss important information. And finally, if you said something wrong or want to say it better, you can use, "Hold on, let me rephrase that," or "Wait, that's not what I meant," or "Let me say that again." These are super useful because they buy you time. They give your brain a moment to catch up while you keep the conversation flowing. And they show the other person that you're thinking carefully about what you're saying. Native speakers use these all the time. We don't just speak perfectly without pausing or thinking or correcting ourselves. We use these little phrases to manage the conversation, to keep things moving smoothly, even when we need a moment to think. Okay, we've covered a lot today. We talked about why listening is hard, why speaking feels so difficult at the intermediate level, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. The big takeaway: listening and speaking are connected. You can't improve one without the other. You need input, lots of natural English input, before your speaking will feel smooth and natural. And the beautiful thing is, when you focus on listening to natural English, really listening and paying attention to how words connect and how sentences flow, your speaking automatically improves because you're training your brain to recognize English patterns. You know what? You just practiced speaking for 20 minutes with me. That's actually pretty amazing. 20 minutes of active practice, not passive listening, but active speaking. I know learning a language can feel frustrating sometimes. I've been there. There were days when I was learning French where I just wanted to give up, where I felt like I wasn't making any progress at all, where I thought, why am I even doing this? I've been studying for months and I still can't have a simple conversation? But here's the thing about progress. It's not always visible day to day. You don't wake up one morning suddenly fluent. It happens gradually, little by little, almost invisibly through consistent practice. It's like You know when you're a kid and your parents measure your height on the wall, you can't see yourself growing every day. But then, one day you look at those marks on the wall and realize, wow, I've grown so much. Language learning is like that. You might not notice improvement day to day, but if you compare where you are now to where you were 6 months ago or a year ago, the difference is probably huge. Every time you listen to English, every time you speak, even if it's just to yourself in your kitchen making coffee, you're making progress. Your brain is building new patterns, new connections. It's all adding up, even when it doesn't feel like it. So keep showing up, keep listening, keep speaking along with these episodes. And remember, if you need me to adjust my speaking speed or if you have any questions, just drop a comment below. I really do read them all, and I try to respond to as many as I can. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you feel a little more confident about your listening and speaking skills. Remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep practicing, keep trying, keep showing up. All right, I'll see you tomorrow for another episode. Until then, keep practicing, keep speaking, and remember, you're doing better than you think you are. Seriously, the fact that you're here, that you're putting in the effort, that already says so much. Take care.